Yeah, I just think it's such a great approach too, because you can get people from different interests, right? Some people are interested in the biking part of it, and then you just educate them on the way. And then maybe the other way around, where people are really interested in the passive house and you get them to not use their car.
Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast.
Well, welcome to the Passive House podcast. I'm Zach Semke coming to you from Seattle, Washington. And we have Ilka Cassidy and Mary James joining us today. Ilka, how are you?
I'm well, and everything's good in Philadelphia today. Sun is shining and we have beautiful weather overall.
Very nice. And how about you, Mary?
I'm great, although it's a little cool for us now for towards the end of May, sitting here with a sweater on, but yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and we are missing Matthew today. He isn't able to be at this conversation, so we'll look forward to having Matthew Cutler-Welsh back next week. We've got an exciting interview with Gunter and Markus Long coming up. But before we get to that, I want to just make some quick thank yous to the folks who make everything at Passive House Accelerator possible. So a big thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingwe Architects, Glavel, Minutair, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Thanks to our champion sponsors, Bewizo, Gradient Comfort, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, PH Air Seal, Proseco, and Source 2050. And a big thank you to NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. So back in 2019, I had the chance to do an interview with Gunter and Markus. This predates the Passive House podcast, so there's a written version of this interview that we'll include in show notes. Some really fun conversation right before COVID happened. So we get to catch up with them after COVID and hear how their work has evolved. And could you share, Ilka, a little bit about how this interview came about?
Yeah, sure. So I think what's great about this is that it shows how important it is to do these shows, these podcasts, because I actually got an interview from a listener from our podcast who is from Austria, but is living in Canada right now. And he actually heard another podcast with Gunter and Markus on the Austrian channel. And he thought it was so interesting and thought we should share that on the Passive House Accelerator podcast. And he reached out to me because he thought I would be the one being able to read the full website, because it's also in English, but I think everything else, like the YouTube channel and everything, is in German. So he thought, he thought to reach out to me and wanted to make sure that we knew about them and proposed to do another interview, which we did.
Excellent. Yeah. So Gunter Long is a longtime leader of Passive House Austria. I know Markus has been involved in Passive House Austria as well. Both Gunter and Markus run Long Consulting, which is a consulting office focused on Passive House. We also hear about Gunter's work proselytizing about Passive House around the world and in North America. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview.
Guten Tag, Servus, Gunter and Markus Lang. Welcome to our podcast today.
Hello.
And you actually have been guests on the podcast before, correct? I believe in 2019, Zach had the chance to connect with you.
Yes, although I think that was that was the old days. That predates the podcast, I think. So we got to do an interview, but it was in written form.
Exactly, yeah.
That's awesome, the old days. So I'm sure a lot has happened since then, but can you first introduce yourselves and tell us about Lang Consulting?
Good at me. We're working with passive houses already since a long time. Gunter Markus started it because when he started, he was a building engineer and was already from the beginning of the passive house scene involved. But I joined then finally when we were building our own passive house Scheibe, passive house disc. And this is a wooden house in passive house standard. So it was quite famous upcycling project. So a bit different than all the normal houses you normally know.
Yeah, so that what was Markus said was 25 years ago, so a really long time ago, on the beginning of the passive house Entwicklung in Austria and Europe. And so that was the first certified passive house in Austria in this time. And this bring us this experience to create our own company, Lang Consulting. So our house were the first input to start with our company. And from this time, focused only to passive house standard in new building, and especially 5 years later, then only more and more in retrofits to passive house standard or NFIT standard, single houses or also quarters, so city districts and so on. And more we make also presentations all around the world, from China to US. I remember well when I was 3 weeks from the East Coast to the West Coast in US and Canada, speaking in around more than 15 places in America. And I hope with this I could move the passive house idea also forward on the whole planet.
I remember that, speaking to her very well too, Gunter. I think I saw you either in Portland or Seattle, maybe both, and it was
I think in both.
Yeah, it was really fantastic, and also I remember your guitar solo. That's part of the experience, but I think it made a real impression, and I think was a really important moment for us in the development of passive house in North America. So thank you for spreading the good word.
Yeah, for Ilka, the guitar solo, I have to translate you what he means with that, because on the podium with a full auditorium, I take a guitar knowing that I could not play guitar and crashing the guitar like Joe Cocker. 1 hour later in Germany, a picture was hanging for me with the guitar in the Passive House Institute.
It's awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask about it. So, well, I was made aware of what you are doing now, or I guess you've been doing it since 2019 as well. The Passathon, right? That's an initiative that you've been organizing. And I've spent quite a bit of time on the Passathon website, and I'm very, very impressed. Could you explain what the Passathon is and how you came up with the idea?
Yeah, the idea was coming from the beginning. The Passive House Institute, and also we in Austria with the Passive House Austria, we organized each year in November the days of passive houses, where people all around can visit passive houses and speak with the owners about the feeling in the passive houses, as well in US and Canada and all around the world. And after around 15 years, we think we have to create a new idea as well. I have to say, my wife said to me, please don't sit all the time behind the computer. let's make a little bit more sport as well. And so in this combination, the idea of the Passathon created, where the idea is to visit on a distance of maximum a marathon distance of 41 kilometers, in minimum the half, so 21 passive houses. So that is the combination of the name passive house and marathon, so Passathon. And with this criteria, only some parts, some roads are possible in Austria in this time, 2019, to bring in minimum 21 projects on a distance of marathon together. And we start in Vienna, the world premiere, with 2,000 people on cycling and by foot, running 28 kilometers to 28 light tower projects, so passive houses. In the night, we started 9 o'clock in the evening, and we reached back to the starting point on the Heldenplatz in the center of Vienna at a half hour, but after midnight. And so that everyone can see which of these 1,000 buildings are the light tower projects. We are lighting the buildings with floaters, light floaters, or with spots. I don't know the English name.
Like floodlights or spotlights. Yeah.
And between the projects, we have all the time music. Also, skaters are with us on board, and so that was really a funny event. Guiding with the police and stop the traffic in the whole city where we are running. And yeah, that was the starting point. Markus can tell the next.
Yeah, and then after Vienna, we had also a tour in Innsbruck, also with skaters and cyclists. And that was shorter, but still had a lot of projects, because in Innsbruck, they even have a higher density of passive house projects, because they have a lot of public housing projects, and like the big public developers, they build only in passive house standard and only. And so there was really also fast tour, but also still almost until midnight, I think. And then as well, we made a third tour in Lower Austria, so more countryside between towns. So there we had to go for a longer distance then, and to see still some nice projects, like even until, like from mostly single family house, but also multi-family houses, until even a passive house prison. This was one of the biggest passive houses at that time.
Wait, did you say passive house prison?
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
They have a courthouse and a prison next door, and they're both built in passive house standard, certified.
Wow.
Yeah, the government normally always shall be a front runner for new climate activities in Austria, and I think it's not very different to others. It needs 15 years from the first passive house that also the public side of the state built his first passive house, and then it was original passive house prison.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what struck me was that you combined this very cultural thing of bicycling, right, with something educational. And yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit about how cultural it is, because I remember even for me in Germany, doing these bike routes or bike trips for even many days or a week is something that you kind of do. I actually did a trip around the Bodensee for my high school senior trip, and I saw that on your routes. That's part of one of the little routes that you have laid out now. I guess when I did it was pre-passive house and pre-Passathon. So can you tell us a little bit more about the culture of bicycling and running in Austria?
Yeah, Austria, I think we have a lot of tradition in outdoor sports like cycling, running, hiking, and also all the winter sports too. But like cycling is, I think, quite the best way to really have handle big distances and see the beauty of the nature quite well. And also over the time now, slowly the infrastructure gets better, so you can enjoy more and more bigger cycling tours. And yeah, with the bike, you really can handle big distances, and so you can explore a lot of buildings and see different landscapes. Like we have tours like where flat areas, like Bodensee itself is also, the area there is quite flat, but we have also quite over mountains with 1,000 or even in total 2,000 meters altitude. So this is really very sporty tours for the best. It's something there for everyone to, if you want to see more, just explore the buildings in your city, you can do that, or just have a nice flat countryside area. Or if you want the challenge and looking for a mountain challenge and still exploring buildings with beautiful architecture, you're also in. So there's something for everyone.
And what is the perception of Passive House now in Austria? Like your typical Austrian, do they know what Passive House is? If they do, what do you think they think of it?
What do you think? First.
About it, what is my guess about the perception of Passive House in Austria, you mean?
In Austria.
Yeah, my guess, and this is partly because I remember some of our conversation last time, is that there was probably a little bit of a kind of explosion of Passive House that happened, and then in Austria that was super exciting, and then there was a change in the administration that slowed progress down. So my guess is that that a lot of Austrians may not really know what Passive House is, even though there's still these really exciting concentrations of Passive House buildings there. That's my guess.
Yeah. Zach, you are exactly knowing what really happened in Austria. Yeah, you're right. After a first part of research, the first project starts, especially in Vorarlberg, around the Bodensee, this area, and so on. And then explosion of projects everywhere in Austria started after 5 to 10 years. And then implosion start, where the lobbies which are fighting against passive houses become the overhand. And how you know, I think it's all everywhere in the world the same way. First, no one understand that there is a new idea growing up slowly. Then everybody think that could not really happen. Then when it started to happen and growing, then the peoples and lobbies which are against this innovation works hard to stop this innovation, and finally it grows back again, and then everyone said, yeah, I have said it all time that it works. And
right.
We are between this third and fourth phases now, especially also together with the Ukraine war. It becomes a new renaissance, the passive house, and now it's popular again to build passive houses. Mostly the people doesn't say that it's a passive house, but they build a passive house. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ask people, the population, the people in Austria, what is a passive house, I think by 90% doesn't know what is a passive house.
I guess most people might have heard about it, but not really know what it is exactly. Like, wouldn't handle to explain you what it means. And definitely not the criteria.
It couldn't happen also that people are living in a passive house doesn't know that they live in a passive house.
Yeah, that's quite often that we even can see that at a lighthouse project. Sometimes if we start talking with some people living there, that sometimes they know, and they know quite well that it's passive house and very climate-friendly building, but sometimes they have no clue about it because the companies didn't tell them anything about it. So it's quite different.
They're just surprised when all these people show up and want to look at their house, right?
Yeah. Well, even actually right now, as we organize the Passive right now, it's usually just single people, small groups. So it's not that big that people get, what's going on here now? So it's more calm how we organize it right now. But what I wanted to say is that now with the Passive, we also try to make a simple way to show people who don't have anything to do with buildings, who are more often interested more in the sports, to show them a bit more about buildings and to get known something about it. So they really first just, it's a challenge, geocaching. And they say, I want to participate and maybe even win a prize. And then they see, this is building and that, and what's different there? Because we also deliver some information with an app. So people learn something about the buildings as well.
You actually have a YouTube channel as well. I found some really interesting interviews with participants. And it was almost surprising who does the Pathathon. So how would you describe the participants in general?
After the first Passathon, where we have spoken that we are 2,000 people going together through Vienna, 2020, everyone around the world know that COVID were coming, Corona, and stop each activities. 3 times we want to change first the date, and then we stopped the activity. And finally, we could find a cooperation with the Energieinstitut for Arlberg, which have an app for cycling named radelt.at. And for that, they can change a little bit the programming and make it for our Passathon. So we have the opportunity that everyone in Austria can cycling to these projects without a guiding tour. So only for himself. That was very important on the beginning of the Corona pandemic, that not too much people are together. And from this idea, it grows now up first from 87 projects in the second year, up now to 671 projects this year. In 28 roads, we have combined the buildings, and so. Most of the participants never heard how Markus said before about passive house, because they are only interested firstly for cycling, and said how they have spoken in the interviews that on this way they find totally new regions of Austria, because it's not a typical cycling way which they have to go. And on this way, they find what is a passive house, and that could be very differently, because no project looks like the other. And it's from single family houses up to where the largest project is 70 square meters, a single apartment in a multifamily house up to the largest project with 60,000 square meters headquarter of a energy net company in Vienna.
Yeah, and about the participants, like what I want to say, like technical subjects is usually you have a lot of men and few female participants, but here we have really 50% of our participants are women, and that's until the top. Like really, some of our leading participants are women, and there's also in the ages really from young, like 20, even I would say more getting older than like in any kind of age until 78 is the oldest participant, if I'm not wrong.
No, Markus, 82 years now.
82,
The oldest.
no. Is better up to date. So really, and they are super motivated as well. Like that's not just some participants, even the old ones who are far behind and just collect 10 or 20 buildings. No, they like last year participant with 74 years, she was collecting 250 projects in all Austria. And also even participants with handicaps participate. Like the winner last year, he was together with his wife on tour, and he had a a lying cycle, where because he had just one arm because of a working accident. Or another participant, he had lost one leg, and she's also participating and collect also 250 projects.
It's a really interesting evolution, because before COVID, you had sort of an organized race. Not that it was a competitive race, but an organized group going through the route together, right? And then because of COVID, you have pivoted, which is like, so many of us had to do in so many ways in our lives, to this more geocaching approach. And my kids are especially my youngest son is totally into geocaching, which is this fun sort of scavenger hunt kind of style thing where you have an app and you try to discover these different spots, and you look around for this hidden item. And so it sounds like now this has evolved into a competition where people can do it at any time that they want to, and they can sort of bag, as in from climbers speak, these different peaks or these, you've saying, what if you say claim? What was the term? You've been using a term to say when you've kind of visited a number of projects. I can't remember what the verb was. Anyway, it's a really it allows for this different kind of scaling up of the concept. It seems like you could really get a lot of people involved. It's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. So the scaling up is really important. But I also think that the new approach has made the Passathon so much more accessible. And that's actually why I was asking about the participants, because watching the videos on the YouTube channel just made it so apparent that there are just so many people, different ages and capabilities, that are participating and having a lot of fun. But then besides the geocaching, there's also some more incentives that people are able to actually win prizes, correct?
Yeah, and also great prizes, like even 1 week staying in a student hostel, but not just any one, in Passivhaus student hostel, of course. Like there are possibilities in Vienna and in Graz, and also like to stay in a Passivhaus farmhouse, an old renovated one, to stay there for 2 days. So there's really nice prices, and then of course equipment for cycling and so on. Organic food from Passivhaus supermarkets.
What are your personal highlights in terms of Passivhaus buildings that you can go and see?
Yeah, one is this farmer house, which was a 160-year-old farmer house on the countryside, not used any longer in the past. And then the architect take it and retrofit it to a plus energy passive house building. The 60 centimeter stone walls, he insulated it with 40 centimeter cellulose inside and then with clay inside. The ventilation pipes are not with metal. He make it with, so please for translation, Zirbenholz.
I don't even know what that is. Sorry.
A very nice smelly wood.
Oh, like cedar?
Cedar?
Yeah, I think
Maybe?
it sounds something like.
Yeah, it sounds like cedar.
Nearby.
There's my attempt.
And other projects are high-rise buildings. So the first high-rise building worldwide, the Raiffeisen Tower, which we have visited also with New York colleagues to build up then the high-rise building for the student dorm in Roosevelt Island. We have universities. We have the House of Music in Innsbruck. So from the culture side, we have a couple very much multifamily houses, also from small one with 6 apartments up to such one with 444 apartments. So in each size we have projects. Especially retrofit projects more and more. And also one of our most important project is the parliament, the Austrian parliament. That is not a passive house, but it was retrofitted over the last 5 years now totally. And they could reduce the energy demand by 50% by understanding the Austrian parliament look like a Greek temple. So it's very complicated to bring down here the energy demand. And so now after 5 years renovation, the first public event there was the trophy ceremony from the Passathon this year in February. And that was very fantastic for us to hold in this most important building from Austria, politicians, this event with 40 winners, which becomes the trophy from the Ministry of Climate.
Wow.
And that motivate much of the winners to be better this year. So the most couldn't wait for the start when it starts at 7th April this year. And so now after 3.5 weeks, we have more than 5,000 visits of projects. And so we are thinking that by the end, the Passathon is running over around a half year, that by the end of this year, we are by around 40,000 visits by cycling or running.
That's amazing. And I know that back in, I guess, 2019, you actually talked about bringing the Passathon to New York and the West Coast here in the US. Is that still a goal?
Yes, I remember the idea because New York have also very hohe Dichte, high density.
Yeah, the density of projects.
Passive house projects. So I think that is a very well starting city or region for such a Passathon in America. But our problem were the financing and organizing. We have to change everything to English language first, and then the program is in the moment only for Austria and South Tyrol, and so it have to be designed totally new, I think. So we are not ready yet, but maybe this is the starting point for next year. Maybe that we can organize together such one in New York. That would be really amazing.
Well, definitely can recommend it for Passive House groups to organize cycling tours in their region. If they have a good enough density, it's absolutely a great activity for people like from the Passive House area, but also to bring new people to the community and to get attention and to show the possibilities. And I know you have done also in the US already some tours. I'm not sure like who did, but
yeah, I remember in Vancouver when I were there by the Passive House conference. After the conference, there was a cycling tour to some passive houses, including with the mayor from Vancouver. He himself cycled with the group.
Yeah, definitely. And we also, I think, we're seeing other regions now, like the Boston area might be an interesting one too. Maybe give it a couple of years for a few more projects to be, or I don't know, a couple dozen more projects to be done. I mean, things are happening really fast there. Yeah. This would be really fun to explore with you. It's exciting stuff. And I think that the shift in the format just provides so much flexibility. It's cool.
Yeah, I just think it's such a great approach too, because you can get people from different interests, right? Some people are interested in the biking part of it, and then you just educate them on the way. And then maybe the other way around, where people are really interested in the passive house, and you get them to not use their car to go and visit them.
Yeah, yeah. How do you confirm that you've visited a site? Is it purely honor code, or is there a way that the app you're able to register the fact that you're there on the app?
Yeah, it works with an app. So you have to turn on the geolocation, and then with the GPS, it confirms when you are about in an area of 30 meters of the point. Then it collects, you get a ringtone. Like you need to open the app, get a ringtone, and then you see the details of the project, and it changes its color. So you can recognize you collected it.
That's really cool.
So it's done.
Yeah, last year we cycled together also with Michael Ingui from the Pasadon Accelerator. He visited Vienna, and so we take this for one day to cycle together in Vienna to some of the projects. And on the next Friday, Simone Kreutzer from Sweden will be back in Austria. She was 3 weeks ago in Vienna, and now we are in Upper Austria and in Salzburg, and we'll cycle also together with her daughter on the tour to Europe for the 75 days to some of the passive houses in Austria.
Yeah, they have a big passive voyage through Europe to explore all the passive houses and meet with all the great people of passive house sector.
Yeah, we got to meet the daughter at the conference in Wiesbaden right before the voyage began. So it's great to see updates along the way.
She have a little bit different criteria to our Pasadon, while we doesn't allowed to go in the passive houses. She have by her tour that they have to sleep in the passive house.
Right. that one might be harder to scale up. Although there are some opportunities. When we were in Heidelberg in the Bonstadt district, Ilka arranged a couple of tours there. And we were all staying at a hotel in the Bonstadt, and this is an example of being in a passive house and not really realizing it. I should have made the connection, but I hadn't made the connection that I was staying in a passive house. I mean, it was comfortable and quiet. It was a nice modern hotel. And then we discovered the next day that every single building in this district is a passive house, including the hotel and the movie theater and the subway, store, like everything. So anyway, there's some opportunities to sleep there for sure.
Yeah. And it was very comfortable. I would say, I think after or the next day when we stayed at a regular hotel, I realized how comfortable the other one was. Yeah.
And when you say that the passive houses are comfortable, the people are thinking normally about the comfort in the living room, and how good it feels to stay in such a building. But comfortable could be also a church. And on Saturday morning, I will show Simone and her daughter in Wels, the first church, also built in passive house. And the fine thing was there that it's never cold, also not in the winter time. Normally in the church, it's always very cold. In a typical one, there it's always warm, always fresh air with controlled ventilation system as well. And it's really energy autark with PV as well, and also very modern architecture design. So for each function, passive houses are possible.
So where are they going to stay? Are they going to stay with you in your passive house?
Yeah, they will sleep by us in the passive house disc in Upper Austria.
Yeah, that's great.
And then on Saturday, after we have seen the church and also a retrofit project from an old factory from 1880 or 90, which were changed to the headquarters center from Fronius, which are the worldwide leaders of producers of PV, Wechselrichter,
ACDC,
inverters,
in this old factory with brick facade and so on. We will drive with the train to Salzburg and cycling there to some also very fine projects like a swimming hall, the Paracelsus Bad, or a Justiz Center as well, a new part and the retrofit part, multifamily houses which are retrofit to the standard, or also buildings with multifamily houses with low income that remember me also a very nice project in Vienna for was heißt geschwind Obdachlose, homeless people, a building with for around 30 or 40 homeless people, which can stay between some weeks or a half year around in this passive house, each with their own apartment, and the whole community where they can communicate together or stay alone how they want. And this project also won the architecture prize for architecture and
sustainability of Austria.
Sorry. I think in 2017 around. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for telling us about your about the Passathon, and I hope that I can maybe next year come and do one of the trips. I'm excited about it.
Great.
Yeah.
Welcome to invite you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're really all welcomed in Austria to cycle with us or along with the app of Passathon. Yeah, and see how great the world of Passathon can be.
In case you can't travel to Austria, you're always invited to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Just search for Passathon.
And we'll make sure we include links in the show notes to those resources. definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Gunter and Markus.
Was a
Thank
pleasure.
you, Zach and Ika.
Thank you.
And well regards also to the others. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. So that was Gunter and Markus Long. Thank you, Ilka, for making that interview happen. And Mary, I think you just got to listen to it for the first time. What were your impressions?
Well, first, I just love how Gunter has been so influential in spreading word about Passive House in Austria, mainly, but also many other venues. And it just says a lot about how much difference one person can make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point.
And creatively, that he's, moved from the more typical just presentations at conferences or what else you might do to spread the word about Passive House to this entirely new way of getting out and reaching a novel audience. So I think that's great.
And it doesn't come as a surprise given his presentation style. If you've probably seen him present, he's very entertaining and provocative, and so it makes sense that he'd be also thinking about new creative ways to get out there. How about you, Ilka?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome to learn about it. I actually didn't know about the Patherson, which I don't know. I regret, I guess, because I maybe could have done some of those trips by now. But yeah, I think what's so fascinating for me is that he took something that was already so ingrained in the culture, like everywhere. So many people are doing these bicycle trips already. They're set up. They have bicycles. They're looking for new tours or new ways to use all that gear. And then he's just adding that education piece to the whole idea and spreads the word that way. So I thought it was really, really cool.
Me too. The DIY kind of piece, or that, you can be really self-directed, I think, in doing these tours now, which is also really cool. And it was something that was, I think, forced by COVID. The Passathon, I think, was more kind of centralized, and there were these organized events with a couple of thousand people at the same time. And now with this app, you can do it and on your own time at any time. And I think that there's some similar apps and efforts going on around like mountain peaks and hikes and all sorts of different outdoor sports, I think. And another parallel that I kept on thinking about during the conversation was this geocaching, which is something that my kids are super into, especially our 10-year-old, where you find a hidden item it starts with GPS and then a bunch of clues. So it's fun to be seeing kind of this, the technology, and it's almost like social media and this different way of getting the word out. We need to be thinking about all sorts of different ways to do that, for sure.
Yeah, and I think originally he keeps talking about the lighthouses, and he also says originally they started this trip in the dark so that all the passive houses were lit up. And I thought that was a really, really cool idea to really showcase those houses or those buildings to everyone, not just the ones that are participating in the Passathon.
Yeah, and I just thought it's great that, as Zach was saying, that you can now do it on your own time. So there's, I think he said, a 6-month period that you can go and cycle in. And so, say one weekend out of a month, you decide to go visit passive houses, and you can accumulate, the 125 passive house visits or something that you need to get a trophy. I mean, as Ilka was saying, if you're already into cycling, why not add more fun and interest to your trips? So that's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I actually just checked out the winner from last year, and I think the winner had 185 passive houses visited.
That's awesome. And we have the app open on my iPhone right now. It's all in German, so I'm not able to read very much of it. And also the trips would be very long distance from sitting here in Seattle. But if there are any listeners who are interested in volunteering some app development time or have connections to existing apps, I think that's one of the things that Ilka you brought up was that the Passathon is integrating with an existing bicycling app that's already around, which is pretty cool. So anyway, if there are any listeners who have ideas about how to bring the Passathon to the US and would like to be involved, please email us at podcast@passivehouseaccelerator.com.
Yes, I mean, there have been much smaller versions of this, right? In Vancouver, they've done bike tours to visit Passive House. I think every summer, maybe, don't they do it?
That sounds right. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, before COVID, there were certainly tours in New York City, and probably still are, but I haven't been on one recently. But, you know, hey, you could take the subway around, not as much fun, but at least you're not in a car to go visit a bunch of Passive Houses.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, great. Ilka, is there anything else you want to add before we move on to events?
Well, I'm just hoping that we can organize something similar to this at some point here in the States. That would be fun.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be really fun. Well, awesome. So at the Passive House Accelerator, we have a number of events coming up that I want to share. So this Wednesday, May 31st. So if you're down under, it means Thursday, June 1st, we have a special episode of the Passive House Accelerator live because it's the 5th Wednesday of the month. So it's called Massachusetts Took Passive House to Scale. You can too. And of course, the Boston area would be a great candidate for Passathon at this point. We're joined by Beverly Craig and Jane Lino of the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, a couple of the architects behind the policies that are spurring on this amazing growth of Passive House in Massachusetts. So please join us for that. Then the next day, we have a special Passive House component spotlight with Adrian Demarchek of Icon Windows and Doors. And so Icon, Adrian will be presenting comparing different window and door material options with Icon Windows. This is one of our most kind of popular kinds of events are these component spotlights where we get to hear from folks about their products and ask questions. And have a really lively discussion. So we'd love to see you there on Thursday, June 1st at noon Eastern. And then next week, we will, on June 7th, which is the first Wednesday of the month, we will have a 101 series of Passive House Accelerator Live. And we'll be joined by Michelle Apigian of Icon Architecture. She is one of the leading practitioners and forces behind this explosion of passive houses happening in Massachusetts, all sorts of multifamily work. She is presenting 10 steps to designing a multifamily passive house. So if you want to hear from somebody who really knows how to do it, please join us for that as well. And there are a bunch of other events that are happening in the community, of course, and we will include a link to our newsletter that has all that information in the show notes. Thank you very much, Ilka, for making that interview happen. And thanks, Mary, for joining in for this conversation. And we really appreciate all the listeners for being here and making the Passive House podcast successful. And we will have another new episode coming up next week for you. So we'll talk soon.